Good afternoon, everyone. So I decided that I will be doing more live videos, primarily because I see that there are comments. There were comments left by several people regarding the previous videos, and I appreciate all of your comments, all of your response. Just FYI, I will be looking a little bit during the video at the chats to see if anyone's posting anything or posting any comments or questions. But I do want to say thank you all for leaving comments about the videos. I really appreciate the feedback. I will now continue to make videos. I was gone for a while and not making videos regularly, primarily because my schedule got really busy. But I really feel that it's important to put information out there about sickle cell disease as well as functional medicine because I believe that there are a lot of people looking for answers, looking for solutions, whether it be about sickle cell disease or otherwise. And so today I wanted to talk a little bit about sickle cell disease and clinical trials and gene therapy and explain a little bit more about what that is. So, as you know, bone marrow transplant is currently the only uh, confirmed and known cure for sickle cell disease. And so, there are a lot of clinical trials that are taking place around the country and around the world to find other curative options for sickle cell disease. So, what is a clinical trial? What exactly do I mean by that? A clinical trial is a health related research or biomedical research studies that are done in human beings that in which they follow a predefined protocol. A predefined protocol is a guideline that is established before the study begins. There's always a principal investigator, and that is the person who is the lead researcher for that study and essentially the go to person. But it's quite common for there to be more than one investigator in a study, which is termed co investigators. Makes sense, right? That means, if there happens to be one or more people who are the leads or the leadership for that study, that they are then in fact called co-investigators. There are two ways to classify clinical trials. They might be classified as interventional or observational. In clinical trials, the individuals participating in the study are called research subjects. In the case of interventional studies, the participant, or in which case, say that I'm the participant or the study subject, I am essentially a patient in that study, right? And so participants are assigned by the investigator to a type of intervention, which could be treatment, like in the case of sickle cell, or it might be a device that is being tested for a specific condition, or another type of intervention. They then measure outcomes, which is basically looking at the way things turned out from a specific type of treatment, for example. In observational studies, the individuals participating in the study are observed and their outcomes are measured without necessarily receiving any treatment intervention. And so, for example, someone might be in a study for high blood pressure, and they might be looking specifically at, how the blood pressures fluctuate during a specific time frame. And so that person might not necessarily be receiving, medication or a form of treatment. That specifically is what you would call an observation study, because they're not actually getting a treatment or an intervention. So, why do people participate in a clinical trial? Some of the reasons are that person might want to gain access to new research treatments before they are widely available. Another reason might be to help others by contributing to medical research and science. For example, when my son had his bone marrow transplant, we had the option of participating in a clinical trial, and for my family, we thought that that was very important. It was important for my son to participate in the clinical trial because we that data that they get from my son and other study subjects will be helpful to other people in the future. And so that was our reason for enrolling our son in a clinical trial. So the next question is, what happens during a clinical trial? The process depends on the kind of trial being conducted. The clinical trial team is usually and always actually a comprehensive team, which includes doctors, nurses, social workers, and other healthcare professionals. Every participant has a health check before beginning the clinical trial, and they are given specific instructions for participating in the trial, which involves signing consent forms as well. The participants in clinical trials are closely monitored during the trial, and there's also ongoing communication after the trial is completed to continue to measure outcomes for a period of time. For example, with my son, with Landon, although he has completed the bone marrow transplant, and he is now officially 2 years out from, actually 3 years out from the bone marrow transplant. He is still being followed and will be followed for quite some time. And so there is a period of time after every clinical trial that people are generally followed out to see what the outcomes are. And so they're monitoring side effects, they're monitoring improvement depending on what the treatments were. They're also monitoring for long term effects after receiving certain treatments. And the only way to track that is to continue to follow people out from the period of time that the clinical trial occurred. So the next question is, what is gene therapy? So gene therapy is the transplantation of normal genes into cells to replace missing or defective genes in order to correct genetic disorders. I said that very slowly because it's a mouthful, right? It's a lot to take in all at once. But in a nutshell, gene therapy essentially is taking the cells of normal genes, right? Taking those cells from someone, right? And then replacing the missing or defective gene to allow it to function normally. For example, with sickle cell disease, we know that there's a defect there in one amino acid. And so, in order for them to correct that gene, they would need to take that missing, replace that defective gene, that defective amino acid, with the correct one in order to get the gene to function normally. So, gene therapy, of course, is very promising as a curative option for many conditions, including sickle cell disease. And so there was an investigational gene therapy study for sickle cell disease that was published now about 4 years ago, and the results were published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2021. And this study was a multi-center study in which there was a total of 35 participants, a combination of adults and adolescents. They were given a single dose gene therapy called lentiglobin. And the study found that in some patients, a single dose of gene therapy restored blood cells to their normal shape and eliminated pain episodes and other complications of sickle cell disease for at least 3 years. With this gene therapy that's called lentiglobin, stem cells were collected from the patient's blood, and lentiviruses, which are harmless, are then used to deliver a modified copy of the beta globin gene, and that's the defective gene that I mentioned. And so, in doing so, this gene therapy was used to correct that defective gene. The modified cells are later reinfused into the patient, very similar to what happens with a bone marrow transplant. The cells then travel to the bone marrow where they can start to make healthy new red blood cells. Is that not amazing? It's truly amazing, to see that we are making such great progress with sickle cell disease. And so, in this particular clinical trial, the gene therapy was reported to completely eliminate severe pain crisis within months following infusion of the modified cells. The follow-up period for this particular study ranged from 4 months to 3 years. So, so far, this is the longest period in which a gene therapy for sickle cell disease has been studied. Of course, there are a lot of clinical trials, and there are gene therapy clinical trials going on, again, all over the country and all over the world as well. And so it's an exciting time for a lot of people, not only sickle cell patients, but for a lot of people who have been waiting for a cure for their specific medical condition. And so, now that I've talked a little bit about gene therapy and the clinical trials that are out there, and some of the data that supports this as a promising route to curing sickle cell disease, I now want to talk specifically about benefits to using a patient's own stem cells with gene therapy. So, in the case of gene therapy, what's amazing about that is that they are able to actually use a patient's own stem cells with gene therapy. And so in this case, it's beneficial because there are no risks to rejection, as it's compared to my son and a bone marrow transplant, where there is a risk of rejection when you are using someone else's stem cells. And so this is a great benefit to people who are thinking about gene therapy, and for people who might actually have this as an option. This is completely negates the risk of rejection, which is obviously one of the more common complications with the traditional bone marrow transplant, again, like in Landon's case. A limitation of this particular study that I mentioned is that you typically need high dose chemotherapy to wipe out the bone marrow in order to make room for the modified stem cells. I explained this process in one of my previous videos. So for anyone who's looking for more information about high dose chemotherapy, what the difference is between high dose chemotherapy and low dose chemotherapy, check out the other videos that's posted on this where I talk about the conditioning process and what exactly that means. Of course, it's also important to explain that there are risks to any procedure or treatment, whether it is a clinical trial or proven to be effective. In this particular trial that I mentioned, two patients developed leukemia, which was thought to be related to the chemotherapy and not related to the lentiglobin gene therapy treatment. And so, again, it's important to also note that with any treatment, whether it be medications or bone marrow transplant or gene therapy, there is always a risk, and so it's important to discuss all your options, discuss the potential side effects, and discuss all the potential complications with your doctor if you are someone that is interested in pursuing any form of treatment for sickle cell disease or any other condition. It's also important to note that researchers are looking at other options for the use of less toxic chemotherapy regimens for the conditioning process. When safer alternatives to chemotherapy becomes available, it will completely change the game. The ultimate goal is to find a curative option that is as safe as possible, sustainable, and accessible to everyone with sickle cell disease. Because, of course, cost is also a big concern. A lot of people are, really thinking about uh, what they should do, when gene therapy becomes available. And more importantly, part of their concern is the cost, worrying about, how much is it going to cost? Is my insurance going to cover it? What will be my options? Of course, it's too soon to tell. I think right now, it's important to know that gene therapy will be an option, and it will be an option for many people with sickle cell disease. And it's an exciting time for people with sickle cell disease to really talk to their doctors, advocate for yourself, look at what all of the possible options are for you, because there are many. And don't be afraid to ask a question. No question is stupid. No question is silly. Every single question that you have is important, and it's important to have those discussions with your doctors and get the answers that you're seeking. So that is all that I have for you today. Today is my first time trying out the live video. I think that it is going to be more useful for people to engage with people this way. And, I appreciate your comments. Please continue to leave comments. And, I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.